Good morning, gang. Happy Thursday morning. Okay, so I think we'd all agree that the world is in utter chaos, okay? And it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next 4 months. We all know there's something in the works, something backroom deals that the people of the world are not being told that something's going to happen. The world is both sides, enemies and allies are afraid of what's going to happen when Joe loses the presidency in November. The thing is, we've got to the point of a situation in the world of the devil you know versus the devil you don't, okay? And it's pretty obvious that Biden's worldview is the polar opposite of Trump's. And regardless of how all the rest of these countries in the world want to think, okay, we know that the string pullers of the world are literally three people: Biden, Putin, and Xi Jinping, okay? I mean, that's it. And pretty much the rest of the leaders in the world bow down to them, okay? Whatever they want, they get. It's just kind of been that way. For decades, it was two. It was the U.S. and Russia, and China's weaseled their way in the last 50 years. But those are the three countries to worry about. So with Joe about to lose the election, don't have to worry about Putin. He recently won re-election, and Xi Jinping is a dictator, so that ain't changing. So the only wild card is Biden. And Biden doesn't want to give up power. We know that. We've seen what's happened here in the U.S. in the last 2 weeks, ever since the debate, that Biden's adamant. He's not going anywhere, and the Democrats have realized, after a lot of them calling for his resignation, they've all come back and now said, nope, Joe's the only one for us. They know Joe can't win, all right? I mean, every poll out there, I think the latest national poll says Trump's up 6 points. Trump's winning in every swing state, and his lead is growing. The last estimate based on polls, state polls, shows Trump winning 358 electoral votes. I'm utterly destroying Biden. The world can't have that, and they need to save the good old boys network. England has basically decided they want to go communist. France has decided they want to go communist. The only countries that have any sort of semblance of, oh my God, we don't want government control is Italy, Hungary, and maybe Poland at this point. The rest of Europe is falling quickly. And it's funny what's going on. We know something's coming up. We know there's going to be a event, let's just do it this way, where Biden can come up and say, I need to cancel the elections, i.e. like Zelensky did. And war is a real good one. And if there's a war that starts, right before an election, there's going to be a lot of people going, now's not the time to change leadership. Remember, Trump wants to end the war in Ukraine. Biden wants to continue it. 10% to the big guy is important to him, don't get me wrong. But so you look at what's happened here just in the last couple of days. Between the U.S. and Denmark, we just announced that we're going to be sending F-16s to Ukraine. That's going to piss the Russians off. Not that those planes aren't going to be the top of the list for targets to take out, but that'll do it. Poland has just announced a massive troop buildup. They are preparing their military for a, as they put it, full-scale conflict with Russia. China currently is on military exercises in Belarus, okay? Belarus being one of Russia's most important allies. And you get into a scenario where what's going to happen? Now, the big problem that you have is the gaslighting and the lying. NATO came out yesterday, and this was kind of funny, talking about the defensive posture that NATO has on the Russian-Belarusian border with the rest of Europe. And the funny part was, and you can take a look at this picture right here. Look in the upper right-hand corner. The data they posted was from 2022, more than 2 years old, showing, oh, there's only 25,000 troops. I think it's 25,100 when I added it up. NATO troops that outside the host country that are in those border countries. Does anybody believe that? No. Okay. We all know there's a lot more. So the question comes in, is NATO planning on invading Russia or invading Belarus? Ukraine just gave Poland permission to shoot down missiles, Russian missiles, over Ukrainian territory if Poland thinks that they're headed for Poland. Okay? Now, Russia hasn't targeted anything in Poland, but the Poles are worried. And if you don't know much about Eastern European history, the Poles and the Russians do not like each other. And yes, I know it's really ironic because I'm Polish and Mrs. P is Russian. We get along fine. But what's going to happen? Is this the intent? Now, you think about it. Europe, like I said, I mean, Germany's tipped, France is tipped, England's tipped. A lot of these countries have tipped way left. They're more than happy to go into at least parts of them, mind you. Like I showed you the map of France the other day. The country wants conservative French values. Paris wants communist values. They're going to be more than happy for the Russians or the Chinese allies, mind you, those two, to storm through Europe. But China plays the slow game. Putin's in no rush. I mean, the war in Ukraine, little old Ukraine, has been going on for over 2 years. You know, a full-blown blitzkrieg, if you want to use that, is not Putin's style. It's not Xi Jinping's style. And the clock is ticking. Biden doesn't have time. Only 4 months till the election, less than 116 days at this point. They need to goad the Russians, the Chinese, into doing something. That's where we stand right now. Both sides are doing this, but they haven't got to this yet. Okay. China's on the border of Europe, Russia, obviously. They're going to push back forth. We'll have the jawboning here for, a couple of weeks. But just watch carefully, because it doesn't look to me like Russia or China intend on pushing into Europe. I mean, again, Poland still being Eastern Europe, Czech Republic, Romania, that's still Eastern Europe. It doesn't look to me like that's the intent, but they're also not going, no, we're not doing it. They'll leave it be. But for Joe, and NATO, because they're all his little puppy dogs that follow along, will do whatever Joe says. Remember, this war in Ukraine could have been over 2 years ago. Very quickly. Joe wanted to be in a war. Joe wanted to be a wartime president. Joe wants to be, he thinks he is Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Okay. Joe needs a world war, like Roosevelt had one. You know, it'll cement his legacy. Right? Joe, your legacy's well cemented. It's 50 plus years of failure. So don't worry, your history books have already been written about your career. But this is the issue, guys. This is to watch. This is what's to pay attention to. I know a lot of us here, not me, have children or nieces, nephews, or whatever in the military. I know a lot of you have told me in the last year or so that they've got orders to go to Europe. Pay attention to this. Pay attention to troop movements, to equipment movements, to anything you see. Yeah, I mean, not the trains of moving tanks and stuff like that that are going back and forth to NTC. Okay, that's normal stuff. But if all of a sudden you see columns of tanks, if you're on the coast or whatever, you know, let's say you're in Baltimore or somewhere there, and you see military vehicles being loaded on ships, that's important, okay? Because everything's going to go there. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not worried, per se, about Russia and or China invading the West, okay? Even though it's still Eastern Europe. It's hard to explain that. Though that's a possibility. I'd say that's 1 in 4. My bigger concern is that U.S. troops, NATO troops, go into Belarus, go into Russia. And at that point, all hell's going to break loose. How they respond, Russia's pretty much already told us, hypersonic missiles, you know, forget this, you got a half an hour's notice at that point. I think it's 8 minutes or whatever from launch to detonation in the U.S. with the hypersonic mission. I think that's the missile. I think that's what the timing is, depending, of course, where it hits. Just be prepared. Joe needs a war. Joe needs something to save his campaign. Joe does not want the media day in and day out talking about his mental state, talking about Democrats or actors that are asking him to bow out, and on the other side, the ones saying, oh my God, he's our only hope. Trump's playing this like a fiddle by shutting up, which actually amazes me, because you think he'd be in there attacking, but he's doing the right thing. You know, never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. Joe needs something to change the narrative. Joe needs something big to cancel the election where he's getting crushed. War is pretty much his solution. He's tried crashing the economy. He's doing a good job of it, don't get me wrong. But that's not going to be enough. Joe needs a war. Joe's always wanted a war. At the very end of his presidency, he may start one. Be ready. Pinball out.